Over the weekend, we were talking about how some bearish things are here, but are people too bearish, and is this going to be a bigger trap? That's something we're going to watch today, and we do have some things to talk about at the beginning of this video. I mean, we have to talk about the fact that, yes, there are some things that could be seen as bearish, but we want to pay most attention to the price action, and that's what we're going to focus on today, because as we look at the end of the week or the expirations for this week, we do see a lot of activity to the put side, and I'm highly doubtful that the market maker or the Wall Street, anyone like that, wants to pay out those things. So we want to pay attention to that. But a lot of people pointing to weakness in this area just because of potentially seasonality. And this is where I wanted to just bring up seasonality real quick in the beginning of this video. This is just a different platform, right? I use this one sometimes, but I mainly just wanted to see the last 4 years and how we've reacted around this time. And if you really look around this time, February 14th, right, Valentine's Day, we actually see that most of the time, actually in the last 4 years, we had 3 reads that went all the way down to the end of the month. As you can see, for seasonality from this point forward, and you do not have to follow seasonality. The most important thing is price action, but we will notice that even this time, this hot pink line of 2024, even this time here around February 14th, we did see some sideways price action. So it's very interesting to me, and that would suggest that we need to be paying attention to possibly sideways or downward price action. Now, that doesn't have to be exact. We can still end up in the upward direction first, but you're just noticing that seasonality would say that we need to turn down from here. So we might need some key levels to pay attention to throughout the next couple of weeks, and that's what we're going to give you in this video. We're going to give you updated weekly expected moves priced in from the options. We're going to talk about this white line down here. We're going to talk about this yellow line up here. We got a lot to get into, so let's get started. We noticed that the 10-year yield dropped off dramatically, and people are really celebrating that, and that is something we want to be aware of, because the major market top most likely will be on people being excited that rates are coming down. So we will be paying attention if that sentiment continues, and if price action proves something bad's happening. We also noticed that the dollar is breaking down, but going to our line where we really wanted it to get to before it can turn back up. And if the market does turn down, the dollar can go down with it for a little bit of time. We talked about that a little bit in Saturday's video. So what is going on with the SPY right now? Like, what is going on with it? Well, you are, and I want to make this very clear at the beginning of this video as I hiccup again, you are seeing a bullish break, right? You are seeing an attempted bullish breakout from the trend, right? We obviously see that that is a breakout. We can get little retests to turn up and things like that. This would mean, and I wanted to make this very clear at the beginning of this video, this would mean that most things are pointing to the upside. They are pointing to our purple line. If you wanted to take the red line into consideration as it is a Tuesday daily expected move, hey, you're looking at 612.12 to the upside, looking at 607.28 to the downside. We're going to talk about those again in a second, but this is pointing directly towards a weekly expected move, right? 617.31 to the upside, you got 602.09 to the downside. And this is very, very key, because now we have some good levels to pay attention to for potential take profits. Even if this wanted to extend or see some resistance and then extend into the next week going into March, we could end up towards 624.28. And something I'm really watching is that 620 level, right? We're above 6,100. We're above, we saw that break above, or attempt to break above 610, which if we can hold above 610, that would say an extension up to, it really opens the door to 620, but that would take us outside of our weekly expected move, just so you are aware at this moment. Now, what are some other levels to the downside, right? If this is going to be, hey, there are some interesting things. If we're going to see this as a fake out, and if this is a fake out, then I think we're really going to tear down. There's a few things that we need to be paying attention to for Tuesday. So for the SPY on Tuesday, you are noticing that 612.12 to 607.28. That's your daily range for Tuesday, and it's very, very small. So if something unexpected happens, bullish or bearish, we can end up at one of those weekly expected moves very quickly. So if we're going to turn down and we see something very quick to the downside, as some people are leaning, I think some people are leaning towards that at this point. So we'll be aware of it, but just keep in mind, everything is pointing that way. Just so you are aware, everything is pointing that way at this moment. You can get a simple little 30-minute pullback, right? It looks like we're just moving sideways on this 30-minute. We don't have any reversal signals or anything like that. So that's overall why we're saying, hey, this bullish move can definitely continue, and that's the most probable thing. You're not seeing a 2-hour with divergence, really. You're not seeing that divergence very clean on anything except for a 4-hour chart. So this would be your hint right? The 4-hour chart would be your hint. But still, why is that 600 level marked off? And you might notice on the right side of the screen, it says the bear bull control line on the daily. So on the daily chart, even though we're on a 4-hour, we're going to look at this. We do see the flat top divergence here. If the 4-hour crosses down, hey, that's a bad thing. We're going to look at Bitcoin in a second as well. Just a random note, but there is something to touch on there. So if this 4-hour would confirm down, yeah, we can catch a bounce there, but this implied volatility for the week is low as well. So if we see something crazy and we break through 600, I believe that's the bear and bull control line. Who's in control? Well, if you're above that line, then bulls are in control. If you're below that line, then the bears are in control. And the reason that I overall made it like that was just because I'm taking the high point to the low point and saying, okay, that's pretty much my range. And right in the middle of that range is this red line that goes to about 662. But what level has been really, really important lately? Well, the level of 600. We see gaps below it, big buying pressure underneath it. We see gaps below it, big buying pressure underneath it. So 600, very important level, and we can mark that off. And I think that in the middle of this range, that would say, hey, if we're above 600, then the bulls are in control. If we're below 600, then the bears are in control. But do we need to even pay attention to that, right? This is all pointing in the upward direction, and the only thing I would really react to is if I saw this 4-hour really cross down, then I would say, hey, if that 4 hours crossing down, the probabilities start to shift that we're going to see something crazy, possibly to the downside. Once again, I think the more likely thing is we're going to see this continue first to get people pretty bullish. Keeping everything in mind that we talked about before the SPY, we can look into the Qs and give you those ranges right away. Let's give you those weeklies. Notice 547.96 takes you outside of the monthly range. That's fantastic. 528.34 to the downside. Hey, that takes you to potentially where that gap was, but we're just paying attention to the Qs because if they want to back off on the daily scale, you would be making that flat top divergence at this point. This would be considered a divergence for me at this point, but it has pretty good scoop ups to try to make that W to move to the upside. So we'll see what happens as that carved out a higher low in some way, and everything's really pointing in the upward direction. Now, this is very, very good for the Qs. This is a great hint because you have a weekly expected move outside of a monthly expected move with only 2 weeks left in the month, okay? So what does this mean? That means if we do see that reaction next week, like this week, coming all the way up to something like 547.96, then by the end of this week, we could close with a 68% chance back down into the monthly, but also by the close of the monthly, we could end up back into this zone, and that could be all we need, and we top out going into March. So something very, very good for the Qs here is having this yellow line and this purple line up. This is what's priced in from the options, and easily you could extend that up to 547.96, and that would be pretty great at this moment because you would get a great hint for what stocks are more likely to do over the next week or so. So that's a very, very good hint, and that's why these purple lines are so useful, and the yellow lines, right? But we notice we have that low implied volatility. So maybe that's going to be a sporadic move up, but it could be a sporadic move down. And that's why we're just mentioning, hey, this in some way does have divergence. So you have to be aware of that. You have lower implied volatility. You have that downward range that you could go retest in there before you make the upside move. So there's a lot going on here. That would mean early on in the week, I'd be looking for the 30-minute pullback, right? So on Tuesday, we'd be looking for the 30-minute pullback. Will it be very lackluster like the daily expected moves are suggesting, right? 541.38 to the upside, 534.92 to the downside. Is it going to be boring? And then you turn down and you just curl back up, and then you start to see more upside, just like a regular squeeze, right? Squeezes can be pretty boring and just end up doing this over time. So that's what I'd be watching early on. The 30-minute does not have reversal signals, so a 30-minute pullback seems likely for Tuesday. If you're going to see something crazy, we're aware of the daily chart there for the Qs. But something I would look for early on in the week is, are we going to gap up and then move sideways, or are we just going to move downward and sideways, touch a daily expected move, and turn up? I think those are the two more probable scenarios at this point, but it's good to be aware of the bear side as well. The main thing for Apple at this point is, hey, does the 30-minute get some kind of pullback soon? I mean, you're looking at this and it's overall squeezing, right? You're moving sideways. You're getting a pullback with time right now, actually, if you just see this moving completely sideways. But this most likely does have more time. I mean, you can see that move up, but you do have this sell zone that we created right above you. So if we end up with Apple up in these areas early on in the week, I'm going to say, like, hey, that should probably pull back down to something like 236.36 236. I mean, maybe even 236.36, but I would say something around 240 would be very, very nice. Get that 30-minute to pull back, retest off the 5, and curl up into positive territory. That's the main thing I see for Apple. As I look at a 2-hour, it's extremely positive. So if we are going to go down to 236.36, that's where I think we are pulling back on the 2-hour. We just see that cross down and cross back up. I don't think we have good reversal signals here. We don't have good reversal signals here. So we need to be really watching for those little 30-minute pullbacks or 2-hour pullbacks for Apple at this point. If we switch over to Tesla, this is great, but we did not take back 357.78. I mean, a very obvious zone, right? This block in here was your zone, right? You have a pretty big zone and you go anywhere in there, buyers can step in. All right, retesting the breakout area is pretty much what is being done. It went a little bit deeper. We went down to the previous wick from where we broke out to, and now we're seeing that buying pressure come in and some very well-timed news for Tesla. But something you need to understand is we haven't taken back this 357.78. This could still fail and either need to go make a quick higher low on the 30-minute again, right? It potentially is doing that now, but it might curl down on the 2-hour. The only thing I'd be aware of for weakness on Tesla is if the 2-hour would cross down and create some kind of divergence maybe, or not, right? If this just keeps going down, you don't see divergence pop up there, you don't have to see those buyers step in. But if you do see something like this, this is going to be a good sign for Tesla to really trick some people and end up in the upward direction. As of right now, the 30-minute is positive, it's curled up, it hasn't been overbought, so it is more likely, just so you're aware, it is more likely that we're building that cup almost to this area, seeing that sideways consolidation, making a little W in here, and we're going to end up seeing that produce upside, then retest 357.78 before heading higher. So nothing about this 30-minute. I mean, the 30-minute, yeah, if it turns down right now, that would be okay. The 2-hour, we're looking for that pullback in some way and seeing if it can catch itself for a trade setup. But as of right now, the 30-minute is not overbought. It just has that. So if it doesn't turn down right away, I think it's more likely to end up in that upward direction as you just crossed on the MACD, and then I think you just want that quick retest of 357.78 before you actually move higher. If you wanted to react to the best upward level, I actually think that's right here, 376.21. I think something like that would be great, and then you could pull back a little bit tighter, right? You don't have to go all the way down to here. You could just do something like this and get that tiny bit of structure to make that little next move higher and keep doing those little moves for Tesla. That would be great. Ultimately, what are we looking for? We're looking if the daily can cross up for a more extended move for Tesla. And that's where we're just going to switch over to Amazon, because Amazon is the one that had daily divergence. Remember that this has daily divergence. It had 2-hour divergence at the top to give us that hint. It just happened to be around earnings, so a little bit risky there. But as we look into Amazon, we still have a daily that's kind of by the center line. So can this continue? Yes, I can see one more push left in it, I think, right? If we're not going to see some kind of bigger correction even from this for Amazon, then I think we do see one more move and then we get that correction. So the 2 hours, what I'm watching here, does this have a good probability to turn up? And I would say so. So once you start to look at Amazon and you go, okay, that has daily divergence above it, 2-hour divergence up here, but we're holding price and getting tight. If that breaks to the upside, what do I think is going to happen with the Qs? Well, I think that most likely other stocks will follow that sentiment, and we're going to see more upside for the Qs, and we can pay attention to that weekly expected move outside of a monthly, and that'll give us some hard probabilities going into the last week of the month. It'll be fantastic. So something here I'd be watching for is, does the 2-hour confirm up? It's not confirming up with a good bar. You see green there, but it's a terrible confirmation at this point. We see 30-minute giving you divergence all across this damn thing. This thing is giving you divergence all across, even in here, even across the way. So this is all saying that this is going to try to reverse back around, but that buying pressure has never shown up. Just because you are tight does not mean you always have to break to the upside. If this breaks down and the 30-minute curls down and it doesn't catch itself pretty quick with another divergence point, that's going to be a little troublesome for Amazon, and Amazon does have daily divergence above it. So let's talk about something else here. Nvidia actually showing divergence across the way on the 30 minutes, suggesting a 2-hour pullback can come. And this is where you kind of start to see it's a little bit of a mixed bag, right? We have some stuff that's higher up. We have some stuff that's trying to give those reversal signals to the upside. It's pretty much like the ones that are higher up, are they going to hold up or continue up, while other ones base out and see an upward move? And then the other side of that is, well, if those ones that are making those triangles to the downside trying to break out, if those fail and turn down and Nvidia pulls back at the same time, that can really add downward pressure to the market all of a sudden. So we want to be aware of that, but still keeping in mind that overall, this looks like a bullish break, and it will have to just give us that paying attention to the reasons to get out of a trade to be like, okay, now I'm bearish all of a sudden, right? We would need things to turn back down. And that's the big thing. We're trying to be like, okay, this is a bullish break. Now, if something goes wrong, that's my only reason to react because it looks pretty bullish. But you do see on Nvidia the possibility even for 2-hour divergence here as well. If that 2-hour crosses down, you might be confirming back down this daily chart. And the most likely thing for Nvidia is to reject somewhere in this area, right? We were talking about this down here. Hey, if we make that quick divergence, we could see a reaction somewhere in between our little white lines here, and then we could see that reaction all the way to 141.12, and if that actually turns down from there, that would be a bad thing. It would be almost like a liquidity grab to actually head lower. So that's the big problem, and we do have earnings coming up around the corner, so it's going to be a risky time for Nvidia, but the main things to pay attention to are if daily crosses down, bad. If 2-hour crosses down, okay, but can that remain up at higher prices and turn back up to the upside? I think that's what you're looking for from Nvidia. This is where I really want to start to pay attention to Meta, okay? If you pay attention to Meta does this squeeze-like behavior at certain times, right? This one did not last as long, but once we actually got those 2-hour divergences, that's when it actually fell down. Now you actually have the 2-hour divergence, you're reaching up towards a monthly expected move, up towards 750 for Meta, and if this 2-hour crosses down, it means finally this daily is going to see a pullback, and the fact that it hasn't seen a pullback in quite some time means you could see something like this, right? A pretty quick downward move by almost, anywhere from 5 to 10%. So what does that mean? Well, that means if we do see a crazy move down for a few days, you could end up down, let's just say 8.5%, down towards 680 to 679. And that would be a great place to retest. But we could end up doing worse things than that, and this looks more like a Tesla moment where we're going to pick out a white line, and over the next, month or two, we're going to end up down towards that line. And I think that's the more likely scenario at this point for Meta. I think it's still bullish. I think it's still very difficult to short, but it is finally giving us a 2-hour signal that says, hey, if I confirm down, I'm giving you that 2-hour signal, blatant, real clear on your MACD, real clear on your RSI. You see it down, and if this curls down, breaks through this low right here, breaks through 720 again, I think you're going to end up seeing some stair-stepper down kind of moves here. And then I think if it's going to behave like Tesla, we might end up all the way back down towards 617.82 for Meta. And that might be where it becomes an opportunity again. So I'd just be watching out for that. I think Microsoft is a good one to look at just because you can see the 2-hour divergence on the RSI very, very cleanly. Now, this is like the opposite side of Meta, though. What if this just curls down now? Well, that would say that this is failing and we're going to continue to flush unless it makes that quick little divergence point like Meta's trying to do right now. So we'll pay attention to almost the opposite of what Meta's doing, which is very interesting. But this is coiling up, right? We're getting tight. We saw a big move, then we got really tight. So if we see that extended move, I think that's more probable at this point to see a daily curl up and get to something like 430 and then fail that move. That seems to be the most probable scenario heading into this week with this price action. As you can see from the 30-minute, you have tons of divergence all across this low. So Microsoft is saying like, hey, I am about to get some kind of reaction and try to take back this 5. If it can be a strong one, then I assume that we'll get to something like 430 over the next couple of weeks. But if that would fail from this, then all of that energy that could have pushed you up to here might have been built up to push you down to here, something like 393.20 to the downside. So you have to be very aware of that for Microsoft, but Microsoft is looking like it's gearing up to try to make an upward move. We just want to be clear if that does fail, and we can probably pay attention to the SPY and the Qs to do that. Now, the other thing we're going to be watching for, if these things are not going to play out, if these things are going to go the downward direction instead of trying to take back that 5 and see an upward move, we're going to be paying attention to volatility very early on in the week, okay? Very early on in the week, you do notice that you have these 30-minute divergences starting to pop up just very, very slightly here. So we're paying attention to it. But the main thing to watch with volatility and how I know, like, hey, are these things going to, they could still produce upward moves. It just means, you know, more so across the board, you're going to experience more volatility if the 2 hour crosses up. If the 2 hour crosses up early on in the week, we need to be watching out. Okay, that's the one signal that I see is the VIX 2 hour chart with the divergence on the MACD, with the divergence on the RSI at the same time. And we need to violate that, right? So as of right now, you haven't violated the point. If we continue to see upside, we would violate that and most likely head down towards 1212 and see some kind of big bull run here for a bit, maybe to get to 620 in the SPY, but something early on in the week, the early warning sign. The only way that I really see volatility coming in the first couple of days of the week is if volatility turns up right away. So I would be watching this right away on Tuesday. We might do a live show tomorrow to talk about some of these things, so make sure to subscribe and join us for that. But this is the main thing that I would be watching as far as something that would scare out my calls, right? So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I mean, obviously the main takeaway here is we have a bullish break, but we have ways that can fail. And if we're just aware of the ways that can fail, that's perfectly fine. If they never confirm, then there's nothing to do, right? If everything remains bullish, then why am I going to get bearish all of a sudden, right? I'm waiting for one of those bearish signals to prove itself to tell me like, okay, yeah, this is bad. Now, we did say, and I'll do it at the end of the video because I wanted to look at Bitcoin. I just wanted you to be aware at the end of the video that Bitcoin does have weekly divergence, and it did confirm last week. And it's potentially just getting indecision as of right now. Now, this was some big wicks, but it did confirm on your MACD. You don't necessarily have the divergence on the MACD very clean, but you do have it on this RSI very clean. You can see the higher point. You can see that coming down. So this is something to pay attention to because this is saying that if Bitcoin can't figure its shit out and turn up on a daily chart, then this might be breaking through 91.8K, and this could end up in the downward direction very fast, right? Once we actually lose this level and see a daily close probably below this low wick here, it's not going to be pretty for Bitcoin, and you could see a weekly move to go all the way back down to 69.1K before this actually becomes bullish again. So if I was someone who was really wanting Bitcoin to see positivity, I would say I do not want to see a weekly break of this white line, and I would also say that I would rather see the daily turn in the upward direction because Bitcoin, the way that it's behaving right now, the reversal signals it has, it's kind of starting to call out, hey, we are potentially at a major top right now. So if we don't want that major top right at this moment, you need this daily chart to curl up. You need to see positivity from crypto, and people are very bearish on crypto. So I think the more probable thing is, weirdly enough, everyone was bullish here. People are bearish just below that down here. They're very bearish about it. So if this thing does confirm up, I think it could see a pretty solid move and really fake people out because I think people are pretty bearish on Bitcoin at this moment, even while people do pile in more money. So main takeaway still though, hey, bullish signal, bullish breakout, okay. Is something going to go wrong? If nothing goes wrong, then it's bullish, and that's about it. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for liking and subscribing. You guys are fantastic. I hope you guys have all the luck in the world with your trades throughout this week. On this shortened trading week, we will be doing some things tomorrow. I'll be updating the course. I'll be potentially doing a hour-long live show just to come hang out with you guys and look at some charts that maybe we didn't look at today. But thank you guys for watching the video to the end. It really does mean a lot, and thank you for being a part of this community. Peace out.